Hi everybody, it's Dr. J. I am going to work on the third demo today. What we're going to do is we're going to work with ArrayLists, and we're going to use some methods this time. So I'm going to make an array list of doubles this time. So I'm going to call it nums, and so we should get familiar with this. You're going to you notice that I use something weird again. I use the double. So some of you actually did this by accident. You know how like we would make a double like this, like double num equals 2.3, something like that, right? Okay. And some of you actually would accidentally type in the word double, and it would still work with uppercase D. And it just turns out that the double is, again, like the integer. It's called a class. It's called a wrapper class. So if I want to be really technical, the lowercase d, this is called a primitive data type, and it's kind of like the lowest level of variables because you just can do the number and you can't perform any methods. But a double with uppercase is actually called, we're making an object of a num. So watch this. You can do num dot, and you can actually do all these methods. Okay, so that's the deal with it. And when they made the array list, they said, okay, people, we're not going to allow anybody to use primitive data types, so you can't do this. This is going to give you an error. So you always have to use the class, the object type of a double. So that's why I'm using the big D here, the integer variable for those. Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to do this time. I am going to actually do some work with methods. So watch this. I'm going to make, remember we'd made something like get me numbers, okay? And I'm going to say get me 5 numbers. So I am like making the method call. I'm making a method call right here. The name of the method is get me numbers, and I'm going to pass a parameter of 5 to it saying I want you to get me 5 numbers. And the secret here is it's going to return me an array list of 5 numbers. So let's go make the method. So just so we're clear, this is the end of the main method, and I'm going to make the get me numbers. So this is going to be public static. Watch this. The return type is an array list of doubles. So check this out. So this is the longest thing we've ever typed as a return type. Array list double, and then get me numbers. And then I have to, I'll call it max here, because that's how many I'm going to get. So array list, this is what it's going to return. And then get me numbers is the name of the method, and the 5 is the parameter we're passing to it. So max gets the value of 5. Okay, so check this out. What I got to do here is I'm actually going to I have to create a temporary variable, temporary array list. I'll even call it temp. I like to do that. And I'm going to call it array list of double. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the array list with random numbers. Let's do random numbers between like 1 and 100. And we're going to put 5 of them there. So watch this. I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I less than. Now, I don't want to put 5 in here because I could want a different amount. So that variable 5, that variable max represents the number that I'm passing. So it gets that value. So I'm going to go while I is less than max. And then I'm going to go I plus plus. That's how I'm going to increment it. Now, I'm going to add, okay, I'm going to add a number to this. but this is where I'm going to make the random number. So you got to remember how we did this. We would do math.random times, I'm going to say 100, and I want it to be between 1 and 100. So if I left it like this right now, it would give me a number between 0 and 99 each time. So then I'm going to put plus 1 on here, and that's going to make it be the number. Oh, that's a good point. I did doubles. Dang it. Okay, I'm going to redo this. We're going to make these all integers because I do want these to be integers. So let's copy and paste that everywhere. And now we're good. Sorry about that. So what this is going to do is it's going to generate a list of 5 random numbers between 1 and 100, add them to this temporary array list, and then you can see it's still yelling at me, and that's because I have to now return the temp. Now this is really clever because it makes this temporary array list, it's empty, then I add the 5 random numbers or however many numbers I want, and then it returns that. See, it matches this. So this returns it, which means that nums is now pointing to this array list, and so this is how nums gets its values. Okay, so that's the deal there. All right, now I could just make a method. I could just like print it here, but what I want to do is make sure that we know how to pass an array list. So I'm gonna call it print the list. I'm gonna make a method called print the list, and the print the list has one job, and the one job is to receive a one-dimensional array list of integers and then go print them. So here we go. Let's go make it. So public static. It's not going to return anything, so it's going to be void. And so the name of the method is print the list. And then remember, since I'm passing it the array list, what goes in the parentheses has to be the data type. It has to match this. So I have to type in ArrayList integer, and then I'll just call this my list, just to give it a temporary name. So this is the method call, and its job, it's going to call this method right here, and then this method has one job, and that's to print the list that we pass it. So obviously some sort of loop is in order, so I'm going to make a for loop, and I want to start with the first and end with the last. So I don't always know how long that, to make this like a really good generic method, you'd want to have it work based upon whatever the size of the list is. So I'm going to go I is less than my list.size, and of course increment by 1. And this is where I'm going to do the system.out.print line, and I want to print each one of the numbers that are in the list. So I'm going to access them one at a time by calling mylist dot, and the method I want is the get, and the get method, and I have to tell it which one that I want. And so what I want to do is get the value, get the element that's at I each time I changes from 0 up to the last element in the list. Okay, so if this works, if this goes right, I should be able to run it, and here's 5 randomly generated numbers that were got from the list here, and then I'm printing the list. So actually every single time I run this, I should get 5 different random numbers. Okay. So, so far, that looks pretty good. Okay. So, let's do like a classic thing, and that is, let's find the sum of all the numbers in the list. Okay. So, I'm going to make a little print line here, and I'm going to say sum equals, and then I'm going to say find sum. So this tells you that I'm making a method called find sum, and it has a job to do. And if I pass it the array list name, then it's going to find the sum of the array list that I give it. Okay. So let's go write the method. This method has one job, and that is to find the sum of the numbers that are in the array list that get passed to it. So it's public static. Okay, so what would be the return data type? Hopefully you were thinking int. Now, by the way, this is funny. You could put integer here, okay, but int is sufficient. And so the name of the method is called find sum. And then this has to have a matching data type as the parameter here. So I'm going to say ArrayList integer, and I'm just going to call it temp, just to show you that you can call that anything you want to. And this is like, I want you to think of this as sort of like a duplicate of this. Now technically, I'm going to tell you a secret. It's actually the same exact reference, but it's a little technical. But just know that it's receiving the list of numbers that you pass it. Okay, by golly, how do we find the sum of the numbers in a list? Well, if I remember right, we've done this kind of before with the array. If I create some variable called a sum, set it equal to 0, and then if I could somehow go through the list one number at a time, and then take that current number, whatever that number is, and add it to the sum, and I did it from going from the beginning of the list to the end of the list, then when I was all done, then the sum would contain that the sum of all the numbers in the list. So let's go do that. So for int I equals 0, I less than temp dot size I plus plus, and then I can go sum equals sum plus, and remember I want to get like a picture of each one, and so I can add it. So I'm going to use the get. So I'm going to use temp.get. And the specific one that I want to get is the one that's at the index of I. And so that's going to allow me to get each. Think of it as like taking a picture of each of the numbers one at a time and then adding those numbers to the sum. And it's still yelling at me because I have not returned the sum. And that is all good. Now before I run this, I'm going to change this from 100 to 10 so we don't have to strain our brains so much when we do the math in our head. Okay, so I just ran it. Here's my numbers. That's 10, 20, 26, 29. That looks pretty good. Run it again. 29 again. 10, 29. Let's try to get one that's not 29. There's 17. 5, 10, 15, 17. So this is working. So this clever little method has had one job, and it was to add up all the numbers in the list, and that's what it did. Now watch this. Now I could make this a lot bigger, like I could say 500. And this thing is awesome because it auto adjusts everything. And so here's 500 numbers. that are between the numbers of 1 and 10, and the total is 2,751. So I want you to go add those all up and see if it actually worked. No, just kidding. Just once we do it for some and we check it, we can feel pretty confident that it works for any other size. So would you believe this? We just made 3 different methods, and those methods we're working with the array list. Now wait a second. Look at this. I'm looking at the assignment, and let's see if we could do any of this stuff now. So the where to eat. So you have to have a list of built-in restaurants, and hey, what did I do here? This should say array list, and then it randomly chooses one of those. Okay, I think we could probably do that, and then basic statistics. So wait a second. You must have a method that displays all the integers in the array list, and there's the method header. That looks familiar. Finds the sum. That looks familiar. So okay, so you get what I'm saying here. I just started giving you a hint as to how to complete this one, by using the techniques that we have here. Okay, I am going to stop this one for now. Okay, bye-bye.